Welcome to the riskadvisor.com podcast. I'm Sal Lafreri, and I'm here with my good friend and co-host, Jim Henry. Today's topic, we're going to talk about secure private cellular networks. Unlike the internet, a communications utility that was built around and for security, something we haven't seen in the past. And we had our guest today, we're on our past show, where we talked about the history of the internet regarding security. We talked about old dedicated analog lines, how to moving from, to the web for ease of use, some of the issues and problems that developed. And now we get into convergence into private cellular networks. But exactly what is that going to entail? So, Jim, what do you think? Private cellular networks, next step in technology here?
Well, I think we need to keep all the good that the internet gave us in efficiencies and scale, but we definitely need to solve the security problems and yet, again, maintain the capacity. And technology has been moving along, and the cellular backbones, which are now used for keeping up systems like 911, have become far more reliable. But the great thing about the private networks is we can solve a lot of these problems that we were talking about, or getting into on the first show, and we'll reiterate here, as a lead in here to what the secure networks mean and how this really can be the next utility going forward. So with that, joining us today via Skype is Pierre Bourgex, who has spent 30 years as a security consultant and innovator through his experience with the RAND Corporation, the U.S. State Department, ADT Tyco Security, High Security, Wallace International, Secure State, and Boone Edom. Currently, Pierre is the CTO and founder of ESI Convergent. Also with us today via Skype is Joe Pinter. Joe is the CIO for both ESI Convergent and Secure PCN, which stands for Private Cellular Network. And he also has been a senior level technology consultant for over 20 years with demonstrated experience in almost every aspect of information and telecommunications field. He has worked across multiple domains, including law enforcement, municipal government, court operations, as well as corporate environments such as global manufacturing, financial services, insurance, and healthcare. Welcome to you both. So, before we talk about about private cellular networks, let's talk about the issues that CEOs struggle with when they have to decide on issues such as power struggle between their IT departments and security, mass use of IT with no more hardwiring, the whole Alexa issue of are you listening, and are these devices hackable? And these are all the things that are driving the CEOs crazy now, trying to, again, maintain the efficiencies and the connectivity, that the internet has brought, but we've got to deal with these other challenges. So how's that platform going to do that?
Okay, I want to set up that really answer with just a couple comments, and then we're going to have Joe basically just, because he's the author of a lot of this. So, we just have to understand that from really the early, or let's say mid 2000s and late 2000s to today, or the first part of the first 10 years of the 2000s, you've seen the proliferation of devices that are connected, right? Right now, today, we may have around 74 billion devices connected, probably 100 and some odd billion that are not. And really exponential growth of those connected devices from sensors all the way to cameras, right? So no matter what. Well, this leads to these issues we're talking about in terms of, IT and physical security and converged systems, right? Of all these connected systems that, from an IT physical security perspective, this is putting everything into that domain. So Joe, that's kind of the world you're living in, and this is you came up with some incredible technology. So,
yep. So, in doing a lot of security applications where we had customers with cameras on the edge, typically they would throw a cradle point in. A police department that needs to watch a house, we put a cradle point in. We hook that camera directly to the internet. The police can just go in and look at that. The only downside to that is everybody else in the world can look at it as well. And you have passwords. You have methods to secure it on the internet, which Pierre has gone into on the previous podcast. But the problem we had is that now you never know who's making the IP stack for these devices. You never know what operating system they're running. You don't know anything about the actual physical, the ability of that device to be cybersecurity secure. So we've had some instances where municipalities have had cameras online on poles and in traffic intersections where they got hacked. Just before large events. There was a pretty famous one where cameras got hacked right before a large event and bought and replaced cameras all at once because they were just wide open on the internet, port 80. So a lot of these customers have come to us and saying, hey, I don't know what I don't know. We have these DVRs. Who knows what operating system can this participate in a distributed denial of service attack? Can this do anything? So the idea that we came up with out of need was let's just take them off the internet. What we're going to do is we're going to make a deal with the cellular telephone companies to give us a private network, to actually give us an RFC 1918, which is similar if you have a Linksys router at home or you have anything running on the home. You'll notice you have a 192.168.0.1 address.
Okay, you realize you're talking Chinese, right?
Okay.
You realize you're talking Chinese.
Okay.
Because the average person ain't going to understand the 198.20.123.16.
I think just about everybody's logged into a router, but I'll
I got enough trouble working a dimmer switch in my fucking house. All right.
Okay.
Let's take it down a notch.
All right, we'll take it back. All right. We've done is we've decided to take devices completely off of the internet. We've worked with large cellular carriers to get private, non-routable protocols that are off the internet. So you'll end up with what we call a secure PC on appliance, an appliance that acts similar to any other cellular device, except for the fact that it is untouchable from the internet. So these devices will have a private, encrypted, end-to-end encrypted road from your device to your data center without any ability for zero-day vulnerability to be affected by it. Because just quite frankly, somebody sitting in China can't even ping it. They can't get to it. So the device is private.
And part of this, and I think this is, let's kind of dumb it down to a certain degree even more, is the fact that with all the devices that were in the domain of physical security and IT, they were looking at this going, well, wait a minute, okay, so I'm connecting all these devices to the internet, to the network, right? And basically have a way to secure all of that, right? Where I have firewalls to secure it. There's a potential for someone like a nation state or some hacker, I would just say nation state hacker, to, we'll say, infiltrate that stream of communication. And we call that a man-in-the-middle attack, right? Somebody who could actually get to sniff the IP address, right? And actually get into the communication path of that device. That's where it becomes dangerous, because here's what happens, right? This is what happened to New Orleans, right? Just recently. New Orleans, we had a hacker who actually connected into their access control system and was able to get through the access control system to their network. And what happened after that is they actually were able to establish ransomware. And that's a whole conversation in and of itself, right? Was able to, be distributed into their network and lock everything down, and we call it encrypt everything. So go ahead. Yes. Yeah,
and another thing they'll do a lot of times is when these devices are accessible from the internet, even if you have a firewall out there, the zero-day vulnerability is a vulnerability that's just not known about yet. Nobody's figured it out. It's not documented yet. So zero-day means that it's always been in there. When the NSA got hacked by the shadow brokers, they found out that the NSA was keeping zero-day vulnerabilities secret. They were holding on to them and using them for a toolkit. So the inclusion of a private cellular network eliminates the zero-day vulnerability, because you just can't get to it to start attacking it. And that land and expand is gone. Once I break through that one little camera, I can't expand out. So being on a private encrypted network, there's no sideways movement at all either.
Would this be around the same time historically that we started looking at, in my time doing consulting for the Department of Justice and Department of Defense, we started looking at asymmetric threats? Was this stuff that was considered under the asymmetric?
Yes. So if you look at asymmetric threats, it was tied to if we looked at the man-made infrastructure, right, to ensure that we could create a private communication platform for six-man teams, right? So we for ground forces, right, so that they could actually create segmented communication protocol with the tanks, right, converging tank command with light infantry and air cover. And that had a secured network that was traveling with them, right? So you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly what we've created, but created in a way that was much more affordable, much more structured in regards to specifically addressing the communication platform of cellular. When I first started, we were creating our own network that was portable, right? So we call it an enclave. An enclave was created, and that's the term they use to exactly what I explained. We created an enclave, which basically was exactly that, the communication enclave that we could travel with, and it becoming secure that no one else could use, no one else could hack because they couldn't see it.
Okay. We're going to take just a real quick break. One of the things I do want to mention, we want to apologize if some of the audio seems a little bit difficult coming in. We're actually experiencing lightning storms around here, so that may be having some effect on the audio. Our guests are coming in via Skype. But in any event, we just want to remind you that you are listening to the Risk Advisor podcast hosted by Jim Henry and myself, Sal Lafreri. We're going to invite you to comment on our blog at theriskadvisor.com and to subscribe and follow us on our social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you're interested in having one or both of us speak at an upcoming event or would like to consult with either of us or both of us, please, once again, go to theriskadvisor.com to set that up. So, as we get into segment 2, I think we've lined up the fact that we really want to talk now about secure PCN and get into it and talk about, so what is it and how does it work?
So secure PCN, it eliminates the need for a private circuit. Before secure PCN, if you wanted to guarantee the security between, let's say, a card reader in a parking garage and your main data center, you would have to pull wire. You'd have to pull wire or fiber or some other means of guaranteeing that was private. To put it on the internet or to put it on any other type of network involved exposing it to the internet in some way. So what Secure PCN does is it allows us to have an encrypted, secure method of leveraging the cellular network to facilitate that communication between that card reader and that panel, or that air handler unit and the cloud provider who's monitoring that for you, or any file needs to communicate securely machine to machine. This is not an internet product at all. It is a private machine-to-machine network.
How do IT departments view this? Do they see this as a great solution? Do they see it as a threat? Do they see it as both?
I don't think they would see it as a threat at all. Just given the example in the last one of the Target breach, right? If that air handler unit had been communicating back to its provider with secure PCN, it would have not been able to communicate with anything else on the network. I'm sure the IT department just allowed that out to the internet because that's what needed to happen. And they were just able to infiltrate that unit. If secure PCN had been there, the IT department wouldn't have had to worry about it. They would have opened up no firewall rules. It would have been segmented from their network. So even if anything was to happen with the provider's network, that secured communication would guarantee it be segmented from their network.
Yeah, I kind of think...
I think it could be used in a million different ways.
I think initially there may be some pushback because, like the hardwired security guy, physical security people that we were apprehensive and skeptical of the internet and using the internet for security when it first came along. And I can certainly see some IT, folk, looking at this saying, well, wait a minute, I know what I know. And yeah, we got problems here that we need to fix, but I'm hesitant to jump on something else. But I think once they understand the benefits that it's bringing and the security issues that it is solving, I think that they will embrace that maybe initially, for redundancy, to have hybrid networks, which is a combination or using the private cellular network as a backup in case their network does go down. But I think over time this will prove itself, and the IT industry, will wrap their arms around this going forward.
I actually got a question, Joe. We were talking earlier on an earlier show, and then a little earlier we were talking about it with the Internet of Things and the fact that a lot of the devices that were put up were security wasn't built into it. So as a guy who has enough trouble running a dimmer switch, how do you convince me that all of these devices that we now want to hang on a cellular network, forget about the internet, now I got to learn about a cellular network. How are those devices that we're going to put on it secure? Do we not have the same problem?
Well, those devices very well could have a zero-day vulnerability, but it doesn't matter because nothing can get to it. Even if they were trying to talk out, let's say they're trying to phone home to China, similar to what some of those DVRs. There was a brand of DVRs that were kind of phoning home. That's where people were using them to take part in an attack. You can't get to them. So when you're on the secure PCN network, first of all, our endpoint devices are 100% denied by default. We only allow what is needed to get the job done. So if that IoT device that you have in your location, we are only allowing it to do exactly what its job is. And if it starts coloring outside of those lines at all, our monitoring platform picks that up, and we even let you know about that. We say, hey, we have a unit sitting on this site that's doing something it's not supposed to. It's misbehaving.
Yeah, and I think to add to this answer is that because we've simplified it and made it so that it is easy for you to deploy, we can spin one of these networks up in 20 minutes. So once you've received the device, we've already pre-configured because we've asked questions on what you actually are connected to, what you're doing, how you're doing it. We actually have pre-configured this, so it is easy. I think you're right on target, Sally. I think most people don't want to make it difficult because, frankly, why this is so important is that it is A, affordable, B, it's easy to connect, and lastly, it is completely secure. And so that's why we built in security into the communication platform, not just in the device, but also the stream of the pipe that is secure machine to machine. So there's, at the end of the day, that's really the holy grail. That's what people have been looking for. They've been asking, it all started with ESI being asked 1,000 times, how do we do this? And, as a consulting firm, we were like, enough, we got to figure out the solution. And when Joe and I got together with our team and we just realized, well, this is a marriage made in heaven. And so we came together and our organizations came together and the solution was created, and he'd been using it for years already. He'd been putting this on camera poles and communicating this way for years, and he just created a much more robust process. And we just backed it up and said, we're on board.
In one of the pre-production meetings, we were talking about it. And one of the things that stood out in my mind was when we were talking about benefits, and you said, well, there's a cost savings. And I asked, okay, so what would it cost? And you said, well, in one particular situation, you're saving on wiring, where an organization, a facility was spending, I think you said something like $3 million for wiring, where they could have got away with $35,000.
Correct. Joe, you want to talk to that? That's great.
Yeah. In the private fiber business, in any of those circuits, the things you hate are bodies of water, highways, and railroad tracks. Railroad tracks being the worst. And this particular customer had a facility on the other side of a railroad track, so they were going to have to bore underneath railroad tracks in order to get that private connectivity that would meet their security needs to get across that railroad track. So setting up the secure PCN devices out there and creating that AES-256 private tunnel between all of those devices, 100% encrypted, we were able to meet their security needs and do it for a fraction of what it was going to cost.
Hey, Joe, can you explain AES-256 so they understand what that means?
That is the current encryption standard that is out there for everything. That is the current highest level of encryption that is supported, and it's hardware accelerated with us, so it's very fast.
One other point I think is worthy in this segment to reference is that, we talk about, devices that may not necessarily be built with the level of cyber health and hardening that is needed nowadays. I would think those manufacturers would be welcoming this because, like I say, even if their devices, have some wayward tendencies, if they're going on a secure private cellular network, they can't get out there and do that damage. So right now, there's a lot more onus on manufacturers of security edge devices, to be hardening their product to basically insulate themselves from doing all the wayward things that you can do on the on the internet. So when we get into segment 3 here, we'll do a deeper dive on this solution of secure private cellular networks and whether this actually is going to be the standard, the way that the public internet has been now for effectively the past 20 years. So you are listening to the Risk Advisor podcast hosted by myself, Jim Henry, and Sal Frary. We invite you to comment on our blog at theriskadvisor.com and subscribe and follow us on our social media like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you are interested in having one or more of us speak at or both of us, I should say, speak at an upcoming event, and would like to consult with us, please go to our webpage at theriskadvisor.com to set that up. So, segment 3, will secure private cellular networks be a standard or actually a requirement that they actually may move into the area of requirements that would be compliance required, whether for specs or for something beyond that? So, Pierre, that's your world that you come from there in consulting. Do you think you can actually drive it to that point?
So yeah, absolutely, and I think that this also plays into what Joe, has been dealing with as well in regards to, the regulated market, the compliance-based world, right? In terms of liability, we all been trying to defer liability, for years, right? Trying to get it off our plate. Oh my God, no, I don't want to hold on into any of this risk, right? I got to try to defer it. Well, unfortunately, over the years, we've seen, many different compliances be created, many different standards created. ISO, right, in the manufacturing world, and you got NERC CIP in the energy world. I mean, there's so many. PCI in the retail world, right? Health HIPAA for the healthcare world, and all of these were created to really try to protect data, right? Protect people's privacy and data. And frankly, it also to protect infrastructure from being hacked, and this is all internet related, right? All network related. Well, all of a sudden now you get all this now physical security devices now on that network, and they are all potential vulnerabilities or potential we call threat vectors, right? They're now on that table of risk. So what ends up happening is that people are going, well, okay, wait a minute. So what, right? I mean, what does it matter if, we got an unsecured network for these devices? Well, then we start seeing, attacks and ransomware. We start seeing networks being locked down and people are bribing, corporations for, look, I'll get your network up, but you got to pay me, $15,000, $20,000, $1 million to get it back, the data back. And so all of a sudden now this is a risk that it's intolerable. We can't have that happen, right? Or data is being stolen, and we've gotten immune to that already. But the reality is, ransomware was you can't get away with that. So people are going, you know what? How do we prevent this from happening? So we created standards. We started creating structure behind it. And what we see is more and more, we see qualification, vendor qualification. Well, if you're not secure, I'm not going to let you become a vendor of mine, right? The banking industry started doing this. So, we start seeing this in the late 2000s, actually really in the mid 2000s, the late 2000s, you start seeing more and more companies asking for you to be secure if you're going to do business with me, because frankly, it started out with the Target breach, right? And kept them going. And now, 2015, we see even more expansion into this concern. And so why do we want to create a private cellular infrastructure to secure and segment that communication? Well, frankly, you now are compliant. And lo and behold, if you build this, NIST, and NIST is our kind of our CYA. You know the CYA for everybody. You need to find a way to protect yourself, insulate yourself from risk. Well, heck, if I can deploy a system that is really follows NIST framework. NIST framework is what everybody has used to CYA itself on the IT side. Well, maybe this is the way to go. And so what we're seeing is this thing called CMMC, and I always forget what it stands for, but CMMC basically is the standard the U.S. government is beginning to deploy to create vendor qualification for people who want to do business with the government. Well, this is now looking to be used across the entire infrastructure from commercial all the way up to government. What this means is you're going to have to get your what together. And this leads you to understand that the liability that you now are holding is something that is real, not just something you could push away any longer. People 5 years ago, 10 years ago, were using cyber liability policies to insulate them for potential breaches on the IT side. Well, with all these devices now in the field, how do you do that if you don't know what their security is? Joe, what do you think about that? I mean, that's kind of where you're at, right?
Yeah, and it's the psychology of IoT. I hate the term IoT. I always say it's got a network card, it's got a CPU, and it's running software. It's a computer. But it's a computer that's very rarely patched, very rarely scanned for vulnerabilities, and very little maintenance ever done on them. They just kind of set them and forget them. So they all become vectors. So having the ability to segment them and only allow them to do the tasks that you need them to do and block everything else and be told when they're doing something else. I think the IT departments, they're scared to death. Most IT directors I talk to are scared to death of what these devices are doing on their network. And for us to come in and give them clarity that, hey, this is the only thing it's going to do. And if it starts doing anything outside of that, we're going to let you know. And that's all it's allowed to do. I think that's a huge benefit.
If I'm understanding this, then the costs are lower and you have the security that's built into it. We avoid the issue where most C-level, C-suite folks or security directors wind up going with the cheaper version. So you come in, the integrator comes in and has a system, and he quotes a price, and then you wind up with the guy who installs cameras at a gas station. He comes in and he comes in with the cheaper price, and all of a sudden he winds up with it. And then later on, the customer winds up realizing that they have all of these issues and problems, and maybe that $10,000, $15,000 difference in the price tag would have been the cheap insurance policy to not have to pay $50,000, $60,000, $100,000 later to fix a whole bunch of vulnerabilities and mistakes. If we go along with what we've seen historically in the industry, then Secure PCN would actually take care of both of those issues, both of those sides.
You got it.
You already bought that. If you bought that cheaper NVR, right? You bought that, whatever brand X NVR that was out there, and you've got it sitting in one of your buildings. Rather than scrap it, we could throw a secure PCN device on there and guarantee that even if it is vulnerable, it doesn't matter, because the only thing it's going to do is what it's supposed to do, and whatever it's not supposed to do will be blocked and notified.
Yeah, and understand, Sal, I'm not going to tell you that I really do love OSDP, which is a security protocol on devices. We love all of that, but frankly, I hate to tell everybody and everybody who's listening is that it's reality, right? With millions of devices out there, I mean, there's no way all of those devices are going to become secure. It's just not going to happen. And frankly, there's no way to have a control on those devices at that point. Now, you do have the aspect of compliance, right? So you have the question mark of vendor qualification, vendor compliance. Are you secure? Is your product secure? And at the end of the day, now when we're creating OEM relationships with access control companies and product companies, and they're saying, look, why can't we bundle the secure PCN with the technology so that we know we're cyber secure? We are cyber secure and communicating securely. So here's the interesting part, guys, and I think this is one part that I think we have to talk about is the birth of 5G. And what does that mean in terms of connectivity almost instantaneously to everything and not having any barriers at all to the communication platform? Well, we know that there are companies and there are agencies, and there are agencies all over the world that are meaning government agencies that are asking for 5G connected or 5G ready devices. And this is what the future
and
is.
And the 5G is to get on the cellular network, correct? So we've gone through, 3G, 4G. Now 5G is what you see the commercials on.
Yeah. I mean, now we're not there yet. Meaning, the only connected device is a Huawei device, which is not accepted really, and is not acceptable in the US. But the reality is that our device is actually 5G ready. It's Cat 6. It's ready to go. It just needs that one last chip, that next step where everybody's accepting it. But frankly, we're on the 4G, the LTE. We're all already connected on that infrastructure. So, that's. Yeah, this is the future. This is today. Well, today it is today.
Well,
and it is going to be the future.
Given the fact that it solves the security problems and it also brings in economic benefits, it really does. It really is in the sweet spot of where the C-level, C-suite, the end users, the manufacturers of the edge devices, the consultants, and the integrators. We're all aligned in seeing the benefits here. So I really think it really comes down to just education of the industry and of end user companies and to have them understand, the vulnerabilities that they've had to date, utilizing the internet, and that going in this direction does not abdicate, the benefits that the internet brought, but it is a sure way of solving the security vulnerabilities. So, it's a big education process at this point.
Pierre, I got a quick question. I need a 30-second answer. And I realize how difficult this could be, but a quick 30-second answer. The Safety Act was a standard that never took hold and provided a whole bunch of liability protections that nobody took. What do you think about secure PCN? Is it something that it works with it, next to it, or works, on top of it? Where does it position itself?
It props it up. It basically gives it the teeth that it never, or it gives it the technology that it never had. I think the Safety Act was to secure those buildings and to ensure communication. We didn't have that. It was too costly, right? We have Safe Harbor Acts the same way, and Ohio Safe Harbor is very similar to the Safety Act. And I think that what it boils down to is that secure PCN, in effect, gives you the way to get it enacted and actually make it happen. And it never had the tools to do it. And it was too expensive. You know how it is. If you don't have something that's easy to install, less expensive, and secure, it's just not going to happen. People aren't going to pay for it.
Yeah, I think especially with the Safety Act, it was facilities were having difficulty being able to obtain the Safety Act designations, even just for the construction of the properties. And a couple of our clients have had that, where you can actually get Safety Act designation on the facility, but you needed to have all of that infrastructure in place to be able to do it. And this is probably a good addition to it, something that should be looked at.
I totally agree. Totally agree, Sal.
Joe and Pierre, really appreciate you spending the time with us today. How will our listeners best contact you?
Actually, you can get us, first of all, go to our website, esiconvergent.com or securepcn.com. That's how you can get both our advisory or our consulting firm, as well as securepcn.com. You can get Pierre at esiconvergent.com, Jay Pinner at esiconvergent.com, and securepcn.com, correct? So, there, you go to our website, all of it is there for your look. You can peruse and take a look at our costs, our pricing, and it gives you really a good understanding of how this is put together. We have a great team of people. We've got a great management team. We've got great service team. So we're doing business today, and we're really taking the order. So it's really happening in a big way.
Oh, very much appreciate your time, and I'd also say that in our show notes associated with the program, there is a file there on a document that Secure PCN has prepared that addresses particularly the applications for CISOs. You have been listening to the Risk Advisor podcast hosted by Jim Henry and Sal Frary. We ask you to subscribe to this show and like us on our social media sites like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. If you are interested in having one or both of us speak at an upcoming event or would like to consult with us, please go to our webpage at theriskadvisor.com to set that up. Also, if you know someone that would be a great guest, please go to our webpage at theriskadvisor.com and make your suggestion. Remember, you can hear the show on your favorite podcast platform, YouTube, and of course, stream at theriskadvisor.com. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you tune in again next week.